A living library provides a very powerful framework for making place-based ecological change in communities and schools. We are cultivating the human and ecological garden, and a living library as a framework and powerful series of methodologies and strategies can be applied to many different sites and situations. Basically, a living library links local resources, human, ecological, economic, historic, technological, and aesthetic. And we see those assets, those resources, through the lens of time, past, present, and future. A living library integrates linked systems, biological, cultural, technological, and the initials spell all. As a framework and strategy for making change, a living library also brings all subjects to life. All sectors of community can be involved in a living library in the research, planning, design, implementation, use, maintenance, management, and communications. Through hands-on learning, all subjects come to life for pre-K through 18 children. All ages participate. This is a curriculum map that looks like a brain, and it's based on a living library framework of linked resources, human, ecological, economic, historic, technological, and aesthetic. And from that, all subjects come to life. Have a look. This graphic is the cover for a book that I wrote, and it really represents the metaphor for a living library. Everyone and everything on Earth and in space is part of a living library of diversity. People, birds, trees, air, water, and all the things that we create, such as parks and gardens and schools and curricula and artworks and networks and communities. It's a way to understand that culture and technology are part of nature. It's all nature. The big idea is to create branch living library and think parks in very diverse communities locally and globally to be linked through green-powered digital gateways. And as each place is unique, the resulting branch living library is unique. And when we begin to share our commonalities and diversities, it's a very exciting opportunity for understanding cultures and ecologies around the world. This slide shows two interactive locales, somewhere in Asia, and maybe on the right, it's the Netherlands. And through display technology, diverse activities are shared. Again, a network of branch living library and think parks is our goal. Here I am in China presenting a living library at the Beijing Academy of Educational Sciences that was sponsored by UNESCO and the Chinese government. And the Chinese people are very interested in a branch living library there. This is the original proposal for a living library that was inspired by the site in Bryant Park in 1981, adjacent to the main research branch of the New York Public Library. At that time, the site was called Needle Park. It was the place where drug dealers went. And the idea here was simply to create gardens of knowledge based on the Dewey Decimal System that would bring out the inside of the library and create gardens with plants that have meaning relating to the different subjects, and visual and performed artworks and programs of lectures and demonstrations and research institutes, as well as the communications technologies. And then in the interior would be international gardens that would involve the various embassies and consulates of New York City. What follows now are a few case studies of projects that are in the ground. The Oh My Excelsior Living Library and Think Park began in the mid-90s and really integrated 9 acres of open space land that involved a high school, middle school, and child development center on an L-shaped piece of land. Based on a living library framework of linked resources, we discovered these old maps of the site. This one from 1913-15, and if you look closely, you can see that it says vegetable gardens and nurseries, and you see a lot of water. So before the schools were on this site, there was agriculture. And this map from 1907 shows very clearly the Islayas Creek running under Balboa High School and Lake Geneva. And to me, this is like really fantastic because I realized that I've been working in the same watershed for decades without even knowing it, because the farm was part of the Islayas Creek watershed in a whole nother part of San Francisco. When I first got to James Denman Middle School, it was probably one of the most depressing places that I'd ever seen. A typical factory model school with acres of asphalt and concrete and very little green. And through a community planning process that involved the students of both the high school and middle school and also the Child Development Center as well as adults, we came up with a fantastic idea for creating a living library with diverse learning zones. This is the first iteration of the master plan, and the next slide shows the San Miguel Child Development Center in its design development phase. And already we have many of these areas in place: the upper garden, the orchard, the Redwood Reading Circle. A well has been dug with the Public Utilities Commission, and a lot of California native trees have been planted around the periphery. Again, learning zones. And this is what the lower garden looked like when we started, very dry and dusty. And the image in the upper right-hand corner, the following slide shows what it looks like today. Big difference. And truly, this lower garden has become a wonderful outdoor classroom for all ages. Do you think these kids are having fun? This is their harvest. Lots of worms in the garden, and we make lots of compost. And here are students sifting the compost, which they love to do. Students also document what they're doing through digital media, and we're creating a multimedia archives of processes and transformation. This slide shows the adults in a Green Skills Job Training program. This is the street before and during. Before and during. Here's students digging big holes to plant trees, and this is the streetscape some years later with all California natives. It's a remarkable difference. Here's students taking away non-native ice plants from the hillside, and then sometime later, it looked like this. Students making artworks as labels for the native trees along the street. Digging up asphalt and concrete, one of my favorite things to do. This is the San Miguel Child Development Center campus. And these are our contractors, the children who participate. This is the new orchard. This is a young girl who's doing a beautiful drawing of on a tile, which she'll glaze, and then it will become a mosaic tiled paver. And hundreds of these were created, and they became the new ADA wheelchair accessible pathway in the new upper garden. And you see recycled concrete making these beds. Again, this becomes an outdoor classroom. This is the Redwood Reading Circle before it became that. And here it is with the children loving these tree stumps. Native trees planted around the whole periphery of the landscape. Bernal Heights is another site, and here we are in a master planning process, and you see the children totally engaged in understanding the resources of their community. And adults from the neighborhood participated, and it was documented by the students. And what came out of this process was the idea to create a nature walk that would link public housing and schools and parks and streets leading down to, guess what? The same creek, the hidden Islayas Creek at the south side of St. Mary's Park. It's the same creek that goes under Balboa High School in the Oh My Excelsior Living Library in Think Park. And this is the reservoir that we're hoping to open, and Holly Park, and St. Mary's Park, and you see the creek at the bottom. Thousands of trees have already been planted, and understories being put in now, planted, and it's becoming a real place. In addition to the nature walk, we have students at the schools making their gardens. Here are students, young children, planting in the nature walk in the park across the street from their school. And here you see adults and children working together in another area of the nature walk. It's very colorful. Here's another redwood circle, which is now like a cathedral. It's grown up. These children are watching the 500th tree in the nature walk being planted by the general manager of the San Francisco Recreation and Parks Department. And behind them you see an oak allée. This image shows the label that's in the park, in the nature walk, that shows a drought-tolerant species. It's shaped like a Fremontodendron flower. This nature walk is actually a prototype for what could be happening in the whole watershed. The Islayas Creek watershed is the largest in San Francisco. And this slide shows in purple, the two project sites that I showed you, the L-shaped piece of land and the nature walk. And this area links 11 communities in San Francisco. It's the largest watershed, and there are many opportunities. It also includes the site of Crossroads Community, the farm. This is the way the street looks currently. We also have a branch living library in Chinatown in San Francisco, which is a completely dense environment. And we started with boxes along the stairs. And gradually we began to take out asphalt and concrete from the schoolyard. And these became green spaces, which have been transformed over the years. And in this site, we also have a very elaborate double demonstration of rainwater harvesting and gardens. And this mural is the label for this demonstration of rainwater gardens and harvesting in Chinese, English, and Spanish. The top of the building, the tallest building, which has a sloped roof, half of the roof is the water drains into a 4-inch pipe into the middle yard, into 2 cisterns, which then drain through a trench in the ground and is punched through the wall in the lower yard and fills 9 cisterns underneath this redwood bench. And in the middle yard, the ground is sloped, and in a rain event, the water rushes down and enters a perforated pipe in the top of this trench in the ground, and then waters this riparian garden, and then goes down the stairs and waters the stair gardens. This is the front of the school. We also have a branch living library and think park in New York City, beginning in 2001. And at the time, the Ford Foundation funded a master plan for Roosevelt Island for a living library. But people said, we don't want to just work and develop a master plan. We want to do something hands-on. So we started a living library in the local school. And over time, it became a really beautiful, lush garden. The monarch butterfly plants, Asclepias, demonstrate the international life cycle of monarchs. Harvest. And in the middle of Roosevelt Island, we also developed another garden, which is more accessible to the community. And here are children drawing, making observational drawings. There's a lot of learning that goes on with the living library. This is the South Point. This is the old smallpox hospital. And when I first went to this site, I was amazed because it's right across from the United Nations. And this is a view from the United Nations looking at the South Point. It's a 13-acre open space. And the idea for this plan was to stabilize the ruins and create a new green building that would become a global center for civil society and comprehensive sustainable development, to be surrounded by international gardens with linkages around the world, and a world stage with the United Nations as the backdrop, and international greenhouses and gardens showing methodologies from around the world. And the green and yellow would be the native park area, the more conventional park, shown here. People were very excited about this plan. Here it was published in the local newspaper and exhibited next to the Louis Kahn FDR Memorial and the Trust for Public Land plan for a green park. This is the 60th anniversary United Nations Commemorative Journal, and in it is a page on the global idea for a living library. A living library is really a way to demonstrate how we are all interconnected, and what we really need to do in our lives and on the planet is to create a healthier balance.